Harrison Price, Tuesday, January 14th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee. Here at the historic Wall Center, in this show, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets, so whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things with Nick Hauka, the coach. We have a big show coming up.
Huge. Absolutely huge.
First of all, how about this gorgeous sunny weather here in the city in January?
Yeah.
This is why you live here.
I live here for the snow. I would like the snow to come back, please.
So picky.
The sun's nice.
Anyways, and I've told you in the past, I hate the afternoon starts for the Canucks, like that first Eastern road trip they do. I just hate it in October because it's still sunny out and like conceivably one could be out and doing things in mid-October. But once you get to the dead of January and the shorter days and the colder days, that 5 o'clock hockey start, that is ideal for me.
Well,
thank you very much.
Our work
Watch
schedule.
the first period with a beer, then have some dinner during the second period. And then
our work schedule, absolutely. We get home a little earlier than the 9-to-5ers. Mm-hmm. If you're in the office till 5, not home till 6:15, you probably want the 7.
If you're in the office till 5, you're not doing Vancouver right. I mean, that's not how this town rolls. Come on now.
Yeah, I know. If you watch the traffic patterns, very few of you seem to be.
Rush hour starts at 2:30 here, bud.
It does. Getting off the North Shore anytime after 2:45. Like when my daughter's got a hockey game in Richmond, I kid you not, if she's got a 6:30 game in Richmond, coach wants her there for 5:30 warm up and all that sort of stuff. You pick up from school, you go straight
to Richmond. And if you get there early, maybe you got time for a snack or something.
But you won't. You won't. I've had some $1.40 trips to Richmond. Woo. Yeah.
Surrey Mitsubishi poll question for today. Is all well with the Canucks now that Philip Hronek is back? Yes or no? You can vote at the Sekeres and Price X and YouTube channels. I voted no. I voted no because, you still have this looming Pettersson-Miller matter. You still need a top 4 defenseman. And while I think Hronek will help a lot of the Canucks transition game, the offense, and some of the defensive side as well, let's see this take hold a little bit. So I voted no, but needless to say, a huge help in this lineup.
Yeah, it's on a spectrum here. Well, to me, is like a 600 win percentage team, and they're below that right now. I think the team, when healthy, is like a 600 win percentage team. Like a third seed in the division, maybe flirting with the second seed, something like that. And they can play at that clip now that he's back. But if you want to feel really good about going on runs with your team, and regular season win streaks and playoff runs, there's still work left to be done for this team within itself and also with the additions that they should be looking at.
I'm just, do you know what the math is on a 600 winning percentage? What is that?
Probably like a 98 to 101, somewhere in there,
points.
I would guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've been telling you about the special offer at Surrey Mitsubishi exclusively for the Sekeres and Price audience. If you've been turned down for financing at other dealerships, Surrey Mitsubishi is going to assign a dedicated representative, Jessica, who is committed to get you approved through their in-house financing program. Bad credit, negative equity on your current car, Jessica is going to apply this special program for you and do everything possible to make sure you're approved. Email Jessica at SurreyMitsubishi.com. Make sure you mention Sekeres and Price to get in on this program. Some conditions apply. Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820, 104th Avenue.
604 win percentage is 99 points.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery, and Dan from Yellow Dog has just made a beer drop. He is our favorite person. Of everyone we deal with, Dan Cahill of Yellow Dog is our guy.
Spouses and children included.
Absolutely, because every once in a while he delivers the goods for us. So thank you. Thank you to Dan. The return of Philip Hronek. Rick Tocchet says he's going to start with Hughes, but he's going to monitor Hronek's minutes.
Yeah.
This is earlier than expected. It was initially an 8-week timeline when he left the lineup. Are we at all concerned that he's rushing back here, Blake, before we get on to all the great things that Philip Hronek does for this club?
I mean, it has to be rattling around in the back of your head. You have to believe. Well, think back to the Walsh tweet that we've been teasing him about. Alan Walsh tweeting, why would club or player take the risk of him playing in the AHL? So, if they're worried about the risk of playing a game in the AHL, they're clearly worried about risk, period. And why would a player risk coming back early when you've got runway? I mean, you got 40 games left in the regular season. There's runway to make sure that you come back 100%. So risk is clearly on the mind of the player's side of the equation. He's got to be ready. He wouldn't be playing if he wasn't.
Yeah, he's got to be ready. And he winds up missing 21 games here, so about a quarter of the season. And needless to say, the Vancouver Canucks haven't been the same without him.
Yeah.
It has been plain as day. There are some times when you can miss a player of that stature, but you have other guys at that position who are similar and in short periods can step up and fill the void, or it's a team approach. We've often said this, you lose the star centerman. Okay, nobody can replace that star centerman, but next thing you know, everyone pulls on the rope a little harder, and you're finding different ways to win, either a commitment to team defense or more guys are chipping in scoring-wise. With Philip Hronek, it has just been so very pronounced. The right shot defensemen who have had to play more in his absence, for the most part, they're not ready for this smoke. I mean, Myers has been better of late. I think we should give Myers some flowers here.
I think overall...
But there have also been times when, Myers has had shockingly bad games. When you've had to, as we talked about yesterday with Noah Juleson having to be elevated and how that didn't fit. I mean, say what you will about the great star power of the Vancouver Canucks, their big four. Philip Hronek remains a linchpin to this team's success.
I think given what you've asked of Tyler Myers this year, remember you didn't really have to ask that of him last year. Given what you've asked of him, I think he's played fine. He's had to actually play a little bit of power play time. Once you reduce the minutes of Tyler Myers because Hronek is back, I think Tyler Myers is probably going to be slotted a lot better. He's played overtime minutes. Hronek takes all that away from him. Like with Hronek here, Myers shouldn't see an ounce of power play time, shouldn't see an ounce of overtime. All that comes off his plate. So I think you immediately slot Tyler Myers down in terms of ice time, not necessarily in terms of pairings, because I think there's still a really good debate here for Hughes, Myers at 5-on-5 to remain a thing. But overall ice time comes down, and I think everybody's just going to feel a little bit more comfortable. They're also not to, and this is all due respect to Myers and how he's played, I think we judge Myers on his defensive play, not so much on his first pass. There was a time where that was in his quiver. He's probably better than the rest, but that's not his hallmark.
Coming off a 2-assist night in Toronto.
Yeah. But I don't think that the offense has been getting from the right side of the ice the kind of service that they need to get the offense going. So having Hughes feeding from the left when he's out there, Hronek from the right when I think there's good balance there.
Yeah, it's funny you break that down left, right. I was actually thinking on my Bet365 bet today, maybe a left winger to score a goal tonight because he gets hit with a tape-to-tape pass in transition. You know, maybe Hoglander is
God.
DeBrusque.
You're a poor man going back to Niels Hoglander every night.
They went 8, 6, and 7 without Philip Hronek in the lineup. 7 in the third category. So, you know, glass half full, managing their losses, finding a way to get points. Glass half empty, boy, found a way to lose a lot of games beyond regulation.
The third column is just such an eyesore. Like you just think about a couple of clutch more goals, and you don't, and you're kind of where you thought you'd be. Like they're that close.
And Blake, if it continues on like this, and I think there's a sense of optimism amongst the market and amongst people who follow this team that, look, this is better than a second wildcard team. And that you're going to see them take a step forward and take a step up the Western Conference standings.
Reasonable assumption.
That is absolutely reasonable. So I think there's a level of optimism out there that's justified. But if they are in this sort of neighborhood down the stretch in April, and remember now, folks, like April's a beefier month than it used to be in this new NHL calendar, right? Like We used to consider March the stretch drive because there wasn't much going on in April. They got 8 games in April. A full 10th of the season is in April. But if they're in this hood, second wild card, first team out, even first wild card in April, I think we're going to be talking about that third column. I think if they're above the playoff bar, we're going to be talking about managed losses and how that's the difference. If they're below that bar, I think we're going to be talking about opportunities missed to gain extra points in overtimes or in shootouts. So 8, 6, and 7 without Hronek. Here's the other thing. This is the very first time all season long, January 14th, game 43, where JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, Philip Hronek, and Thatcher Demko are in the lineup, albeit Demko is not tending goal tonight. So you tell me whether that counts or not. He's available. Yes?
Yeah. I mean, they've gone with the better goalie right now in a big
game.
That's
the next discussion point. Kevin Lankinen is making his 5th start in 6 games. He has played 7 of the last 8 because, of course, he came in that relief performance against Seattle. We are deprived here of the Vezina Trophy showdown between Demko and Hellebuyck. Hellebuyck, the reigning winner of the league's top goaltender award. Demko, of course, a finalist for the trophy last year. Are we at all surprised that it is not Thatcher Demko this evening?
I am not in a strategy standpoint. I am surprised that they didn't feel obligated to do it.
Good answer. I was going to say the same thing.
Like, this is the better chance to win here tonight. And I don't think Demko is
it's indisputable, Blake.
Horrific. I don't think he's where he shouldn't be. Like, everything that Demko has done, pretty understandable. And you talk about mitigating losses and mitigating, like, considering what he was coming back from, Demko's done well to get the Canucks some points in the games that he started. Mm-hmm. But right now in a big game against a conference leader, I think you got to throw everything you have at it, and they clearly have by flying Hronek in for 1 game. I think you got to dress your best goalie.
Demko has 2 wins in 8 starts this year, 2, and 3. Lankinen is 16, 7, and 6. Lankinen with the 251 goals against, Demko with the 317. Lankinen with a 906 save percentage, Demko with a 883. And then, of course, there are 4 shutouts on Kevin Lankinen's side of the ledger.
Second in the league, yeah.
So, yeah, Rick Tocchet and his staff, Marco Terranius, the goaltending coach, are treating this in the old line that Alain Vigneault used to give us. Which goalie gives me the best chance to win tonight? And it's Kevin Lankinen. And Quinn Hughes was talking about this yesterday, not the goaltending per se, but the Vancouver Canucks as a defensive team. It has been the hallmark of Rick Tocchet hockey since he arrived here 2 years ago now, coming up on 2 years ago, that they play terrific team defense in front of quality goaltenders who are there to make saves when that defensive posture breaks down. Let's hear from the captain that he feels like the defense is solid. It's about that other side of the puck.
Honestly, like in the last 3 games, I think we've given up 4 goals. So, obviously Carolina, we were held to 16 shots or whatever it was. But the games before that, I thought we played pretty hard. And if we play like that for the rest of the year, we'll be in a good spot.
So playing more of the identity you want then?
Yeah, obviously want to create a little bit more chances. But I find at the back half of the year, it's all about defending and who can keep the puck out of their net. And then, we'll get our looks.
Wise comment there from the captain. The second half of the year is more about defending.
Mm-hmm.
We see this year to year in the NHL. Typically, you get a lot of goals in October, November when defensive systems have not yet taken root. By February, coaches have had enough time to drill it into them.
And it's why
we saw this last year as well with Elias Pettersson, and a lot of the Vancouver Canucks went quiet after Boffo first half, where they were filling nets and fattening up their own stat lines.
But across the league in the playoffs, it's why a goal feels like a touchdown. Game 1 of the playoffs, that first goal goes in for your team, it feels like you're up 7-0 because goals are tougher to come by. You know that intrinsically. So that being said, I do love the fact that he squeezed in the caveat. Hey, do we need to create more? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is not a 2-1 league anymore, thankfully. It is a 3-2 league, and the Canucks aren't getting to 3 goals on average. So they do need to aim the artillery a little bit higher here.
And Hronek should help.
Yeah.
Boy, it wouldn't be awesome if he just stepped into one, unleashed a clapper tonight.
I'd be surprised if there's a shoulder issue, but you never know.
Just thinking aloud. Also, you say goals are like touchdowns. What then would that make a goal in the Hasek Brodeur dead puck era? Remember
game over.
Like, is that like a cricket century? Like,
yes. Yes. Well, back in the Sceond era, which is post-cap era and post-trap era, I mean, especially in the playoffs, but just generally speaking, because of Luongo and the fact that, once the Canucks were up 1-0 in the city in the 3-year window of the Sedins, like, it was over. You were done. Like, it was toast.
Dakota Joshua, Coach Tocchet acknowledges is skating, but isn't close enough that he's got any kind of firm return date. He classifies Joshua as still week to week. Darren Dreger, actually, before we get there, because we're moving off the game here a little bit, Yellow Dog, neighborhood, on top of dropping off beer for us, what are they up to this week?
Well, the one brand you didn't mention, Foolish Wine.
There you go.
Keep that in the back of your head. They've dropped something pretty fantastic. Sign up now for the Fantastic Wine Club to receive. That's literally what it's called, Fantastic Wine Club. To receive 3 fanciful shipments per year of 9 Foolish bottles, including exclusive merch and first access to limited release wine. You also receive 15% off anytime you shop in the tasting room, and you have the unique opportunity to make reservations of all YD Bevco tasting rooms. Head to foolishwine.com to sign up. My wine rack full of Foolish wines.
Well, we went to a tasting dinner last year.
We did that too, yes.
With the winemakers there at Foolish Winery, so which was fantastic. Drager says the Vancouver Canucks checked in on free agent defenseman John Klingberg, ex, of course, of the Dallas Stars and some other teams. A guy at one point who was amongst the best offensive defensemen in the league and a total zero defensively. Dreger says they have decided against that. I mean, if you can't suffer Eric Brandstrom, what are the chances that Tocchet and Foote were going to have Klingberg on the ice? And then This
he had a 2-year swing where he was minus 56.
green jacket, multiple green jacket. Frankly, Nicholas and Woods are jealous of the number of green. And then there was this, which was interesting from Dregs. Parity is slowing the trade market down. Right. We know this. We've talked about this before. We've talked about this just grotesque pack of teams in the Eastern Conference, none of whom are really contenders in any way, shape, or form, but they're all tightly packed there amongst the wild card. Really, it's every team but Buffalo, from the Bruins, who sit on the first wild card at 47 points in the East, all the way down to the Islanders, who are 9th in the wild card standings, just 6 points
And
behind.
I'm here for all the play-in talk because I think you got nothing to lose. It's a do-or-die game, which is kind of fun. But imagine they instituted a play-in. This would be even more grotesque, this parity.
Yes.
And teams would be even more frozen in their rosters.
As we know, the West is a little more cut and dry. I mean, if you think in Anaheim, Seattle and Nashville can rise from the dead, okay, but for the most part, Colorado, Calgary, Vancouver, then maybe St. Louis or Utah in the wild card competition. But with the exception of, the 5, say, Western teams, 1 Eastern team, Buffalo, though that could change, you don't have a lot of declared sellers right now. You still have some teams on hope bets that they can stay in. But among the sellers, Dreger said, some of them are waiting to see what happens with Elias Pettersson and or more likely or JT Miller. And he says that because I followed up with him and checked in. Number one, if a Pettersson is moved, maybe a Miller as well, but if a Pettersson is moved, that sets a market price, right? If you're a seller and you've got an asset that's pretty good and Elias Pettersson gets moved and suddenly, okay, you've got a comparable there, or at least you've got something to go off of in terms of setting that high price. But also, he says the sellers are waiting to see because for the most part, they have players who are not of the Miller and Pettersson level and thus are fallback options. That there are some teams that are hot to trot there, hoping to see if they can land a JT Miller, hoping to see if they can land Elias Pettersson before the deadline. And if and when they don't, and let's face it, I think it's going to be difficult to execute an in-season trade to the satisfaction of all parties, that if they don't, well, then they're going to turn their attention to sellers and the available pieces amongst those 6 teams. And let's face it, it will be a larger field of sellers between now and the start of March.
Yeah. And it's certainly what it feels like. The trade wins have not been very fierce here throughout the course of the season. The bottom barrel teams have not seemed desperate to further thin out their ranks and create cap space and tank, even though it's abundantly clear who the terrible teams are.
Here's the thing. There is not a consensus first overall, like a Macklin Celebrini or a Connor Bedard. I saw Craig's list. TSN's Craig Button had Matthew Schaefer at the top of his draft rankings. I know others had James Higgins, the American center.
Yeah,
at
I like
the top
Higgins
of
a
their
lot.
Draft rankings. I think Martone and Misa are quite attractive and players that I think a lot of teams might view as equal to Higgins and Schaefer. So you don't have that. Plus, Blake, you only got a 25% chance of landing the first overall pick if you're the worst team.
Mm-hmm.
So guys who maybe aren't generational, who aren't going to change your team, or at least not going to change your team in the way that a Celebrini or a Bedard could, as we saw with McDavid, some other first overalls, maybe closer to a Yuri Slafkovsky, Nico Hischier type first overall, right? Good, solid players, guys who are going to come in and be contributors and help you win, but aren't going to be difference makers in and of their own right.
I'd take Hischier over Alexis Lafreniere at this point.
Would you?
Yeah.
Okay. Nevertheless, so I think you have a little bit of that going on, right? Like, why should I proactively, unless someone bowls me over with an offer, why should I proactively weaken my team, subject my fans and dressing room to a whole lot more losing? When I've got time, I can use it, and we can play out the final 20 games like that as opposed to the final 40.
Never mind subject your fans.
I get it.
Look at the bottom teams in the National Hockey League right now. Do you want to subject the other number one overalls that you have there and make them lose and lose and lose? Do you
You're talking about Macklin and Connor and having a yeah.
Do you want them carrying the 1,000-pound weight of a 50-loss season?
So I would distinguish and say in San Jose, fine with that. Part of it has to do with this Macklin's first year, not second. Part of it has to do with just the fact that the kid's personality. He's just delighted to be in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
But Dard seems a little more sullen at this point. And I don't blame him. I mean, it's a miserable team.
And part of me hates the narrative of that team, like that guy knows nothing but losing. Like that's always been the hockey mantra is, the guys lost so much they don't. I don't know. There's been a lot of examples. That first generation of Oilers,
Nugent Hopkins,
the Taylor Hall Oilers, the current Sabres. All that high end draft talent, but they didn't get it surrounded properly. They lost a lot, and can they ever drag themselves out of it?
Yep. We mentioned yesterday, Tocchet with some interesting comments to McIntyre, and I want to read one of the quotes, and then we're going to hear from Coach. Tocchet says, quote, "I've got to own up to whatever I got to own. I think I can teach everything, and I think we can win. I would never take this job or I wouldn't coach. If I just came to the rink and thought, it's not me, it's the players, I've got to take responsibility." So part of coaching to him is being an active agent, being a guy who can help a team win, or if it loses, taking responsibility. Again, we've talked about this since he got here. He takes ownership, which I absolutely love. When things go poorly, he says responsibility on these shoulders. When things go well, he deflects the praise and puts it on the players. I think that is very, very wise. So in that vein, he was asked yesterday about the transition game or the lack of transition game. And you may remember, everybody, this was something that came out of his mouth at that year-end presser last year following the loss to Edmonton in the playoffs. It was quite clear he knew the question was coming. It was quite clear he had already started the introspection and the offseason work in terms of where this team has to improve and where he has to improve. The areas that dovetail together there. And rush chances and the transition game and scoring more in flight or generating more in flight as opposed to in the half court, set it up, pass it around, look for that quality grade A, is an area where the Canucks were deficient and are still, a half season later, deficient. He was asked about that yesterday. Here's Tocchet.
To get better at that. I mean, that's something we have to get better at, transitional game, rush game, to be successful. We're still working on that. But, you take, for instance, Winnipeg, they're one of the best. They got, third or fourth in goals and third and fourth in goals against. So, and I watch them play. They don't sacrifice the defensive part for offense. They play both sides of the puck very well, very well. So, I think there's a room for improvement from our team, but it's also a lesson too that you look at a team like that. They don't cheat for offense. They still get it because they play good defense.
You know what the big difference is there, though? They've got some speed.
Yes, they do.
And that allows for you to come back and make up for mistakes, and that allows you to break out the other way.
A few things there. Number one, good that he continues to take ownership responsibility for that. Number two, doesn't sound like he likes their chances versus Winnipeg.
No, he wasn't exactly building them up.
But yeah, number 3, and he didn't say it. We're extrapolating, but it may well just be personnel.
Yeah.
And Hronek's going to help because Hronek can make that outlet pass. Noah Juulsen's not going to make that outlet pass a lot. Vincent Desharnais's not going to make that outlet pass a lot. Soucy's not going to make that outlet pass a lot.
The question is, what version of Philip Hronek are you
then
getting,
the
though?
second part is he's making the pass to somebody who can skate, like somebody who can occasionally beat somebody wide, right? Somebody who can occasionally feather a pass that hits a teammate in flight.
Now, he's had he's had one procedure. He's got 2 things worked on, though, Philip Hronek, right? So we got to be careful about expectations, A, in game 1, and B, even in the medium term as he comes back from all of this, because Philip Hronek may not be the player that we last saw. But let's hope that he adds something.
Yeah, and all of that is coming down to me saying here, Blake, yes, they need that other top 4 defenseman who can transport the puck. But when I look at the winger composition of this team, when I look at who they had and who they added, like Besser and Garland, not really transition players.
No.
Right?
No.
Those were the holdover, and Höglander as well. Those were the holdover mainstay goal-scoring wingers that you had on your team. DeBrusk, no flies there. Necessary. He was a necessary addition. A guy who can play that game a little bit, so that's good. Sherwood as well, and we thought, hey,
but he's from the bargain bin. That's different.
This kid has more offense. Really great scout on the Vancouver Canucks. Great player identification. Terrific free agent signing. He's been a blast. Lekkerimäki's coming. We'll see how the youngster.
But he's not a skater per se.
Well,
so
yeah, okay, but he has already scored a goal in transition for the Canucks because the shot's so great. Heinen. The bottom line here, Blake, when we hear insiders tell us that the Vancouver Canucks are looking for that middle to top 6 winger who can help them with goal scoring, I think we're getting down to a profile of can skate and threaten the opposition with speed. If you're looking to improve your rush chances and your transition game, I think you need to not only look at the structure and the style and the format and how you're trying to do that, starting from the back end out, but also who's on the receiving end of that pass. And I think they may not have equipped this coaching staff with enough of that element on the flank to be able to add this element of the game appropriately.
Well,
in any kind of measure.
Here's the good news. Of all the Canuck needs, that's probably the most attainable one.
Well, and I sit here and I look at Höglander's name and I think of the drought and I just wonder where his trade value is compared to when we first started talking about this drought.
That was always the risk.
And here we are. And so what more are you going to have to add to Höglander to get that guy?
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a time where maybe it was a 1-for-1 or maybe it was a sweetener. Now I think it's looking more and more because I think the contract extension now could very well be viewed as onerous or at least is going to be negotiated back at you as onerous with Höglander, even from teams that like the player. Well, we like Höglander, but I mean, he's on 2 goals. And he's going to be making $3 million next year, right?
Yep.
So you say it's easily attainable?
It's just more easy than a right-side shot defenseman, top 4 defenseman.
No question. But I also wonder how attainable it's going to be. Again, it's going to because it's a specific profile of player, right? Like there'll be other wingers out there who just don't fit this mold. And maybe that's good enough for them, and they'll just think he's an upgrade, and let's go. And, we'll work on rush and transition in future years. But if you're looking for that profile of a player, particularly with what you have to offer and the fact that some of those assets have decreased in value as this season has gone along. It's not the most difficult channel for Alvin and company, but I still think it's a narrow one.
If the Red Wings are shaking things up,
all they've done is win since the coaching change.
Yes, it's true.
They're one of the teams that's jumped back into this Eastern mix.
We'll see how long that lasts. Mm-hmm. If they regress back to where they were, would 27-year-old Alex DeBrincat be on the hit list?
Well, he's expensive, isn't he?
He's 7'8".
He's 7'8". For how many more years?
3. Fits the bill, though.
Modified no trade.
Yes, half the league he's got on a no trade.
Okay. I mean, I like the profile of player. Like the age range of the player. How's he doing this year?
Great. 19 goals.
Oh, wow. After 27 each of the last 2 years with two different organizations.
There's good consistency there.
And, of course, one time a 40-goal scorer. That doesn't make him a 40-goal scorer.
No.
That was the outlier here. I mean, I think he's going to cost a fair bit.
Yeah.
But I think you're barking up the right tree in terms of profile, age, skill set, aptitude.
And a guy like Höglander would have to go the other way for cap purposes.
Well, and a lot more.
Yeah.
And a lot more.
And the first-round pick.
No, unquestionably. I mean, that might be one where you need to give the first-round pick and one of your top prospects. Mm-hmm. That might be Wiehlander and the first-rounder. I mean, we'll see how much.
Or Wiehlander and Lekkerimäki.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see.
To replace the winger for them.
Who knows where Yzerman stands on him now? Yeah. Who knows where the new coach, McClellan, stands on him? But hey, Steve Yzerman just gave away Jake Wallman, so he's capable of a double bogey or two, maybe. Who knows? We'll talk more about trade and that profile of winger, that guy, as we move along here in January and February. Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta. We've been telling you about the big party we got planned a week from Thursday. This is Thursday, January 23rd. Join us for a Canucks Army watch party, an unforgettable night here at Greta. As we watch Vancouver take on Edmonton. This is presented by Fountain Tire. Rivalry night, doors open at 5, puck drops at 6. Each ticket grants you access to all the action, and it's all in support of One Broken Bike, our charitable partner for the evening. 4-person VIP reservation includes entry into the event, Greta Burger, and they're terrific, a beverage plus a game card. Don't miss out. Secure your spot, nationgear.ca. That's Thursday, January 23rd, 5 p.m. doors, 6 p.m. puck drop. Vancouver and Edmonton, and a terrific night of fun, raising money for One Broken Bike. Okay. We got a big show. Cam Robinson's going to join us. He's got a little ditty about Quinn Hughes. So a lot of players in the league are talking right now about this Miller-Pettersson situation and how it's wearing in the Canucks room. We will be joined by John Shannon. And then the new head coach of Vancouver Whitecaps FC, Jesper Sørensen, will join us. Danish coach.
Get your first impressions.
Yeah.
And see what you think. I think they jump on a plane today.
I thought it was Thursday.
Was it? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. But off to Spain to begin training camp.
Mm-hmm. Time now for a Bet365 Bets of the Day. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. I got the Rams last night, baby. Didn't need no points.
I was feeling very good about mine because I think he had all 209 yards of his, Matt Stafford did, by the end of the third quarter. But then they didn't need any more points.
To throw the ball.
So they just ran down the clock, and I lost mine.
Yeah. I started this Canucks trip by betting the under, given the missing personnel. Just the way this team was tracking were not even goals, but shots were so hard to come by. Then they went over in Montreal, but they've gone under in the last 3. It's Hellebuyck who's well on his way to a third Vezina and Lankinen tonight. And I would suspect that with Hronek, it will be more keep it simple tonight, right? Get your feet wet, defend. So I'm going usually go over 5.5 goals, but this Canucks team and an incredible goaltender at the other end, plus Kevin Lankinen, we know how good he's been, under 5.5 goals.
Canucks zig when you zag, they zag when you zig.
Oh, okay.
Not you in particular, but whenever you think that. And the fact is, Quinn Hughes is involved in virtually every goal scored by the Vancouver Canucks. So as long as I see plus 240 for 2 points for Quinn Hughes, I'm going to get suckered into that. 2 points is not unreasonable on any night for Hughes, and at plus 240, it's a good number.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets, so whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Cam Robinson coming up next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by Ben Moss, with a history dating back more than 100 years, proudly Canadian owned and operated. They got a large selection of Canadian mine diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. They got mine diamonds with a payment plan to suit your needs. 5 locations in British Columbia, Victoria, Chilliwack, Abbotsford, Coquitlam Center, and Willowbrook in Langley. For more info, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless, as we welcome in the Director of Content for Elite Prospects. Missed him last week. He was coming back from the World Juniors, our friend Mr. Cam Robinson. Happy New Year. How are you?
I'm doing well, boys. Happy New Year to you as well. Missed our chat last week, so happy to catch up.
Yeah, we missed you as well. It's funny, Cam, because in all this talk of Pettersson and Miller, let's not forget whose team this is. It's Quinn Hughes' team. Like, he's the captain. He should run the room. I understand you're hearing something about Hughes and his place in all of this between Miller and Pettersson.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a great point to bring up, too, is that, everybody kind of thought it was either going to be Miller or Pettersson who was going to get the C when it was kind of up for grabs there as a jump ball. And I think a lot of people were surprised that it was Quinn Hughes, and I think that his time wearing the C here has really emphasized what an excellent choice that was to give him the captaincy. But yeah, we know that the NHL, they have their own little MSN Messenger board circa 2002 where they chat. And I have had some people reach out to me and just say that Pettersson isn't the only star on that team who is fed up with JT Miller. And I don't know if we have a running count going on right now, but by my estimation, there's only one other star on the Canucks, and that's Quinn Hughes. And so it's, JT, he's kind of like some of these hard-nosed, old-school coaches that we've seen in the past. Tortorella, Iron Mike Keenan, right? Like, they have this really strong impact early on. And, they have a short shelf life. Is that message sometimes it wears thin on some players that don't have kind of live at that same vibration that they do. And we saw, JT, he ran out of steam in New York after, a shouting match with Henrik Lundqvist. You don't mess with the king. I mean, he was a cap casualty in Tampa Bay. I don't think there was any issue there in Tampa Bay, but he's a highly passionate player, and I think that's what makes him so, impactful on the ice. So it makes him a good player. But I also think it does start to wear thin in the dressing room. And if this is the case, and if it's not just, whispers that they're being made up on around NHL circles to kind of spearhead potential trades, is that, I do believe that there is some validity in that. We know that Quinn Hughes and Pettersson and Besser, they're tight knit and they have similar personalities. They're not loud and boisterous and they're not great in that regard. And JT doesn't really fit in that mold. And it doesn't mean that all those type of personalities can't coexist in a dressing room, but sometimes it does. And so it's just something that came across my desk that I thought was pretty noteworthy, because Quinn does seem like he's just kind of that quiet guy who takes everything in and assesses and then makes his own decisions. But he's in this position, and the team has obviously had a lot of drama going on, and that's on the captain too, to try to mitigate that and to try to smooth things over. And if he's fed up with JT as well, I think that's just another kind of dagger in this situation.
Second Yellow Brick Road reference yesterday from Quinn Hughes. I don't think we need to do a deep dive on the Wizard of Oz plots, themes, and characters.
I like the commentators have said it's clear he's watched Wicked.
Yes,
yes. Theatrical.
It's quite possible. But there are some internal squabbles within the group, Dorothy et al., on the road. Do you think that's his way of sort of saying, I got this, that, this is going to be a journey, but I'm in charge here?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the energy he's put out there from day one, right? Is that they at first they wanted to keep it in the room, and it's like, but it's bled out, and it's become an issue, and it's a talking point, and it's something that, you guys have been around NHL dressing rooms, is that they can say they don't listen to the media, they don't go on social media all they want. It permeates, right? It gets into everybody's world. The wives are talking about it, kids are talking about it. It's just something you have to deal with. And this has obviously been just a dark cloud that's been hanging over the team. And not to say that this is 100% on JT Miller, right? Like there are different personalities that are not mixing well, and maybe Pettersson didn't take some of the criticisms as well as he should have too, and maybe that's coming from Quinn too, right? Like I'm sure, and Pettersson said it himself, is that he hasn't played up to expectations. He knows that too, so maybe he's hearing it from other guys too. But it's just, this is Quinn's team. He does at some point have to put his foot down. It's Tochet's team too. It's kind of shut up and play, boys. Like everything goes away if you play well. And I'm sure that they'll get off each other's backs too. And so we see Pettersson is starting to, ramp up that kind of dynamic two-way ability that he has. We're starting to see that elevate up, while we're also starting to see JT's minutes kind of slide down a little bit too, and his impact on the game. So it's they got to find a balance where if they're both rolling, this whole story goes away, I think. But there is, when there is smoke, there's often fire too. So it's still real.
The things, for sure, some we're going to monitor between now and the deadline in March, not to mention in the offseason if nothing comes to pass. But, things do seem like they've settled down here a little bit. Mm-hmm. And perhaps more importantly for the Vancouver Canucks tactically on a game-by-game basis, they're getting Philip Hronek back. Cam, what can he do for this club?
Massive re-addition, right? Like, and not to say that Hronek's some like superstar, but he is a very capable player who can chew up 24 minutes a night. He can kill penalties. He can play on your second power play unit. Quinn loves to play with him. They have nice chemistry together, and it just shifts everybody down the totem pole on that right side into more manageable expectations, more manageable circumstances for them. So, it cannot be understated or overstated how important Hronek is to this team, simply because of the lack of depth on the right side, and because he's a good quality player too, who has, like I mentioned, that chemistry with Quinn Hughes. So, hopefully he can get up to speed quickly here. I know he was skating with Abbotsford for a couple days, practices there, just to try to get the legs going underneath him, but to get airlifted in at the end of a road trip, we'll see how many minutes he gets and how effective he is, but just coming into this month and into the kind of the back half of the season, that he's got to stay healthy. That D-core needs a boost no matter what, but this is an internal one that they absolutely needed and should help them mitigate some of these. They need someone who can move the puck up ice that's not Quinn Hughes, right? And so now they have another one of those guys, and Hronek can absolutely do that, and hopefully generate some more shots and some more chances and some skating. Yes, absolutely.
Hronek skated in Abbotsford games. Who would say that?
I'm sorry. Practices. Yeah. I'm going to be getting a text from the agent here.
Yeah. Well, and his return. Look, they started this season hoping to generate more rush chances, Cam, and it hasn't really been successful. But you could argue Hronek's been out for a couple of months, and maybe that had something to do with it. We've spent a lot of time here recently talking about Tocchet style of hockey. Look, are they just incapable of rush chances because, especially minus Hronek, they don't have the personnel? And then secondly, it looks like he has adjusted a little bit here and asked them to put more pucks on goal as opposed to, playing for that grade A chance. What do you make of the Canucks stylistically here in the absence, and what could possibly change or improve with Hronek?
You coach with the personnel you have, and when the blue line can't get pucks up ice and generate those rush chances with their feet, or to activate in, or to make long stretch passes, and when your forward cores, right, you were missing Miller for a good stretch. Pettersson's obviously been battling some injury and some inconsistency, and they really haven't had guys all rolling at the same time, healthy or otherwise, to really generate. But that, it doesn't mean that you should just shut it right down. I think that obviously Tocchet's just been like, we will reduce our rush chances for, because that will in turn, lessen the rush chances against, right? Like if you have defensemen activating all the time, odds are there's going to be some odd man rushes going back against you some of the time too. And so they've been trying to just seal it all up, slow it all down. But Chicago Blackhawks are the only team that have fewer shots per game than the Canucks, and it's by 0.1, right? Like we're talking about a lottery team who picked first and will be picking probably in the top 3 again. Like they live in the bottom of the league now. And so you have to be able to generate more chances, more shots, even if they're not off the rush. So I think that, Tocchet putting that in there, we need to find a way to get more pucks on net is absolutely, and that's just how you get things going too, right? When things aren't clicking, throw pucks on net, go crash the paint there and go try to get some dirty goals. It doesn't all have to be bar down snipes where you're walking downhill on the power play or whatever. It's like, get pucks on net. Good things will sometimes happen, and that can maybe get guys rolling where they can find some of those prettier goals too. But I think with everybody starting to get healthy here, that hopefully they open it up a little bit. And this isn't a run and gun team. They don't want to play fire wagon hockey, but I think they have to sometimes open things up a little bit to generate those chances too.
So without Hronek, Hughes has really just solidified a Hart Trophy campaign. And you can debate what they're doing right now off the bat, put him in the comfort spot, Hronek back with Hughes rather than second pair minutes. I mean, you can debate where that would have been the likely spot for him to land on game 1. But going forward, has Quinn Hughes not proven that he can elevate his game and still be the same old Quinn Hughes even with Tyler Myers? And can Filip Hronek elevate Carson Soucy the same way, or do you just go back to what works?
I think you take a look at both. I think you do. Quinn has been able to put together, there's nobody that's as important to their team as he is. I don't think that's even a debate. No. And so, but you don't want him to have to drag Tyler Myers or the rest of the team around for 30 minutes a night every single game. You want to,
and 20 games of Myers there is different than asking Myers to do that for 60 games too, right?
Exactly, right. And you want Quinn to be at his best in May and June potentially, right? And so if he is gassed and has had to been dragging this team into the fight every single night, you do want him to have some familiarity, some comfort zone with Hronek there. But I absolutely agree with you that it would be nice to have Quinn out there for 30 on the first and have Hronek out there for 25 on your second pair, finding those minutes down the lineup and help spread things out. But that's a luxury, right? Like if you had another right shot defenseman, another top 4 right shot defenseman, legitimate top 4, then absolutely. Then you can mix and match and stuff. But at this point, it's Quinn and it's Hronek, and then it's a bunch of bottom pair guys, in my opinion.
Love your takes on prospects, and Jonathan Lekkerimäki remains that. He is with the big club, skated on the 4th line Saturday in Toronto with Blueger and Di Giuseppe, and we know he can't be all that he can be skating with those two guys. But how do you feel? But they need goals, Cam. So how do you feel about Lekkerimäki as sort of a power play specialist and down lineup guy right now for the Canucks?
I got no problem with it. I think that you can. That's what you do with a player like him right now when everybody's healthy and you have your lines are set for scoring, checking, whatever. Is that, I look at like Cole Eiserman at the World Juniors, we were just there, is that this kid has always played 20 minutes a night, always on the first line, always on the first power play. He's a goal scorer. He gets all these opportunities. He goes to this short tournament and David Carl goes, you know what? You're going to be our 13th forward. I'm going to pop you out there on the power play and you're going to score some big goals for us and you're going to go right back to the bench. And he's like, I got it, coach. And that's exactly what he did. And he was a highly impactful player for them, playing 8-9 minutes a night. And if you can turn Jonathan Lekkerimäki into that right now, and just milk all the goals and all the offense out of him without risking any of the defensive side stuff, any of the defensive zone draws. He can take a regular shift in your bottom 6, but you want to put him in those positions to succeed when the offensive chances happen. So maybe there's an icing call in an offensive zone faceoff. Maybe then you slide him up into a top 6 spot and just get him out there with fresh legs and work it around. You get him on your power play. You give him those opportunities to make a difference in a short amount of time on ice. And for a young player who's just finding his legs in the league and maybe isn't quite ready to eat up a full-time role, I think that's a terrific spot for him. But the key is getting him in those spots when he can, and then he has to make good on them too.
There's only so much time for him to be out there and in those prime spots, and you do wonder, like, should Lekkerimäki be in the NHL for the rest of the season? Or, they're about as healthy as they need to be outside of Joshua. Where should he be the rest of the way here?
That's up to him. Personally, is that if he wants to be in the NHL, he needs to, get 3 shots on goal in 9 minutes, and he needs to score on one of them some nights, right? And if he does that, then he can stay in the NHL. If he's playing 10, 11 minutes a night and he's getting 1 shot and he's not contributing offensively, then he should go back to the minors, because then he can play 16, 17 minutes a night and he can regain that confidence. He can work on some of the other things away from the puck that will make him an effective top 9 skater for the rest of his career. And then when injuries arrive, boom, you bring him back up, and hopefully you can catch lightning in a bottle. So I think it's definitely up to him on how he plays and how he produces, whether or not he stays in the bigs for the rest of the season.
And lastly, Cam, Sawyer Mynio, Canucks prospect with Canada at the World Juniors, wrap his tournament, and he's been traded from Seattle to Calgary in the dub. What does that do for him?
Well, it means he's going to get a longer playoff run, that's for sure. I think he, whether by design or by coaching or whatever, he didn't really get a chance to play his game in Ottawa at the Worlds there. And not a lot of players really showcased their best for Canada at that event. But, he was brought there to kind of be this like mean-spirited, clear the net, bang at the end boards, win puck battles, and be like a physical presence who can then move the puck a little bit too. And whether he was afraid of taking penalties or it just wasn't, he was just being tentative out there. He didn't really play that game. So he didn't show much. He didn't show all that well, I wouldn't say. And a lot of people were pointing out, like, why is a guy like Sawyer Mynio here when we could have Zane Parekh or we could have Carter Yakimchuk? And, like, fair enough, because they had another player like Andrew Gibson. You didn't need to bring 3 Sawyer Mynio type players to that team. But I think that he held his own in the limited minutes that he had. And now going to the Hitman, he'll play a big role and he'll play the style of play that he wants to play and that he should play. And then, if Canuck fans want to tune in some Hitman games, Calgary's going for it, right? They've been loading up on pieces. They want to go on a deep run and push for Memorial Cup appearance this year. So they're going to be a fun team to watch down the stretch and into the playoffs. And if you want to get a look at what Mynio can actually do, go check him out in club play and don't really judge him on his appearance there at the World Juniors.
Yeah, tons of BC content on the Hitman team, too. This draft-eligible forward, Kindle from Coquitlam. They got their leading scorers from Gibsons. Carson Wetch is there of North Vancouver. And as the aforementioned Yakimchuk, not a British Columbian, but a high pick.
Hey, before you go,
the Ottawa Senators.
How crazy should people be getting over Landon Dupont?
This kid is good. This kid is like exceptional status. He is exceptionally talented. I actually have a video coming out on him that I break down just like, among U16 skaters all time in the Western Hockey League, he's like the 3rd most effective. And I'm talking all skaters. This kid's a defenseman, right? There's no precedent for a U16 guy to be putting up these kind of metrics in the CHL. He is legitimately that good. Like Everett was a bottom feeder last year, and now they are like a legitimate contender. And
a 15-year-old is elevating
right?
Everett.
He is that good. He's that good.
For those who don't know him, he's a 15-year-old right-shot defenseman from Calgary who's playing with the Everett Silvertips and has 43 points in 37 games, tracking to be a first overall in what the 27 draft.
That's not even a real year. Like,
he'll be on that World Junior team next year if I have anything to say about it.
Oh, I hope so.
Can you imagine 16-year-old defenseman on Team Canada?
Jay Bouwmeester?
Jay Bouwmeester.
Yeah, Jay Bow. He was there.
Yeah.
It's going to happen before. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it will happen again with this young man. Awesome stuff, Cam. Thank you for this. Welcome home. Catch up next week.
Guys. Talk to you soon.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
So here's some price from the historic Wall Center. Our next guest, John Shannon, the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, the new show, 100% Hockey with Darren Millard, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the most famous man from Oliver, British Columbia.
Hi,
and
boys.
he joins us on Tuesdays. Hi. You had Bruce Boudreau on your program yesterday.
Yeah,
What
we
did.
did.
What did he teach you about how he handled the Vancouver Canucks and notably Patterson and Miller?
I think the one thing that came out of it for me, guys, was that I don't think there was a great deal of surprise of the friction between the two, and that the challenge is is how you manage it. And and the also thing that I think came through was that he believes you can manage it. So I think that when you look at the talent of both guys and you put 23 men in a room, it's always going to be a challenge.
He said that he had a certain way that he went about coaching Pettersson, and that it was similar to what he applied with Alex Ovechkin in Washington. Flesh that out for us.
Well, I think that when you deal with superstars, and particularly younger superstars, and let's face it, when Alex was there, he was much younger than he is now, closing in on Wayne's record, was that it was very much a one-on-one confidence and trying to not necessarily challenge the player, but expound the virtues of the player, to say, you know what, we know we're going to put you in this spot because we know you're good. We know what you can do. And with Bruce was that the dressing room, and you guys know this, the dressing room is not necessarily a place where the coaches work very often. That's the players' area. So managing individual personalities and it becomes a one-on-one practice, whether it's a small skate around before the morning skate, or it's in the hotel or on the airplane. It is almost a private session that's required, and it certainly sounded in Bruce's world that he relied on that a great deal, not just with Pettersson. He said he did the same thing with, Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry in Anaheim, and I suspect there was 3 other guys in Minnesota he did it with too. Yeah,
but the upshot being Pettersson needed a lot of positive reinforcement,
as opposed to JT Miller, who needed to, that's a fair conclusion to come out of what Bruce said yesterday, that they were at opposite ends of the spectrum from a communications level, and I think you could probably see how that they are such different personalities.
Right. So he was Huggy Bear with Petey, and he was Grizzly Bear with JT, like dropping challenges at his feet and basically seeing if he could poke and prod and get the best out of him.
And putting fences around him, saying, no, I don't want you to do that. It's very different. Coaching's in the spotlight here just a little bit because his contract status and a newfound clause or wrinkle to his clause that he can walk away too. It's more a mutual option. It was presented as a club option originally from Mr. Rutherford. But also the fact that he's changed the way this team has played. He has ratcheted up the defense to the point where he's not only stifled the Canucks, the opposition's offense, he stifled the Canucks' own offense as well. And it's been intentional given all the injuries. The question we've got now, John, is when does he release the pressure valve there just a little bit and allow the Canucks to score a few more goals?
How about as early as tonight when Hronek returns?
That's the question.
I don't think enough has been made about Hronek's injury. I think that people are, at first blush, the team's just not what the same is, but he's been out a long time and he's a valuable member of that blue line. And the domino effect of Hronek coming in, and I assume playing with Quinn Hughes at this point, unless they want to put him in a position of 15 to 16 minutes before you get to 24. That domino effect of putting people back in their right spots, I think makes a huge difference for the Canucks and does relieve a bit of that, having the forwards come back and assisting as much as they have in order to try to get through these rough games at times.
Do you think that the Miller Pettersson saga is wearing on the coach much, or do you think he's seen it all?
I think all of these guys have seen it all, Blake. I mean, let's remember, Rick Tocchet. Look at Rick's career. Rick Tocchet's first coach in the National Hockey League was Mike Keenan. Mike Keenan in Philadelphia had a bunch of young players, Tocchet, Mellanby, Derek Smith, and he challenged them and I'm sure that many times. I remember one night at the Coliseum, the stories coming out of the Flyer room about Mike having kids against the wall and then the kids having Mike against the wall. Which is the way Mike coached. I'm not criticizing the coaching style, but you live in that type of world, you get your thick skin quickly. And I think that a guy with Rick Tocchet's pedigree and the amount of years he's been around the league, he has seen everything twice.
I think you're free to criticize the coaching style, by the way. But it's amazing Rick Tocchet's turned out as stoic as he has, because we've been commenting on how he is not the coach that's in the face of the refs on a nightly basis. It's amazing he's turned out, considering how he played and that atmosphere that you just talked about, he's as stoic as he is on the bench.
Yeah, look who he's coached with, though. I don't see... I don't see when he was with Mike Sullivan, I don't see Mike Sullivan going off the rails. And I think when you're an assistant coach, after you have been a head coach, I think you glean. I think you say, whoa, I wouldn't have handled that if I was the head coach differently. And we seem to be in a much better place because of the way Mike handled it. I think that's a big part of the learning curve that every coach goes through in this game. So I Tocchet in Tampa. Remember, he took over a bad team after Valerie Melrose got fired, 21 games into the season. In Arizona, it was a different animal where there was really no spotlight. So the Pittsburgh time was probably a better learning curve for anybody. Jimmy is not afraid to give out opinions about how to manage situations, and neither would Mike Sullivan, but Mike Sullivan would have led by example, and I think that you're seeing that with Rick Tocchet now.
John, with the return of Hronek, really, it's only Dakota Joshua who is missing from this lineup. You have been quite bullish on the Canucks most of the season at full health. Do you think this is a cup contender as constituted?
I think it's a playoff team. How's that for sitting on the fence?
You're stopping short of cup contender.
I do, because, I've watched a lot. I watched Edmonton play an awful lot. I think that, and I've watched Winnipeg play an awful lot. So I think those are three teams that right now are better than Vancouver. And if Vancouver can contender, they possibly would have to go through all three of them, but certainly would have to go probably two of them. So that's the real challenge, and I think that's what you have to do when you're looking at your roster right now and you're looking to March the 7th and saying, okay, how do we become competitive with Vegas, who's in hockey right now, and the Edmonton Oilers, who just seem to be getting better now that Stuart Skinner has settled down.
Yeah. Top four defensemen away, or do you think there are more pieces than that from contention?
I think I would probably like them to see them get another forward as well. I think they do need some more goal scoring, and I think they need two pieces. But mind you, I think that if we did a cookie cutter interview about what's going on around the league, I think every general manager would say that if they're in playoff, four defensemen, and they need another top six forward. So,
yeah. Lastly, from me, John, we were having this conversation yesterday. Kevin Lankinen is going to start tonight, so quite a goaltending matchup, Lankinen versus Hellebuyck. If you're the Canucks, are you looking to re-sign Lankinen even if he costs you starters money? Do you think he's been that valuable to him, and that Thatcher Demko is such a question mark going forward with his health and entering the final year of his contract? Would you be inclined to hand Kevin Lankinen a starter's contract before he gets to free agency in July.
Okay, so define the starter's contract money-wise, Matt.
I mean, Joey Daccord at 5.5. Maybe it's a little less on term and money, but in that ballpark.
So I get in for $15 million for 3 years, I'd sign him tomorrow. So, when you look at where goaltending is right now and what percentage of the cap, there are teams that are in this league that are paying, upwards of $13 million. So if you're going to be in that $11, $12 million range, then I don't think it's unreasonable. You're talking, Kevin Lankinen has earned something from the Vancouver Canucks. Now, if I'm Kevin Lankinen, am I sign? Am I taking my time? What's the market going to be like for me? So, there are two sides to that coin. But if you could get Lankinen, in my opinion, as I saw the poll yesterday, if you can get Lankinen for $15 million for 3 years, I'd be doing it.
The Florida Panthers are spending $15 million in goaltending. A team like Carolina is spending $5 total.
And there's quite a philosophical juxtaposition between those two.
But I'll tell you what, Freddie Anderson went on IR today again, guys. Freddie Anderson's.
Yeah.
And if the Carolina Hurricanes have one issue, it's going to be goaltending. Pyotr Kochetkov cannot do it all himself. Spencer Martin's a great story, but it's just not an answer. There are, they've got themselves in a real bind in Carolina.
Yep. And you wonder whether John Gibson or one of the available goaltenders is going to matriculate to Carolina. John, marvelous stuff. Thank you for this, my friend. We will catch up next week.
See you, boys.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Sekeres & Price from the historic Wall Center. Big news out of the Whitecaps today. They have found their new head coach, the 6th in MLS history, full-time coach in MLS history. It's our pleasure to welcome in to the program and welcome to our community, Mr. Jesper Sørensen. Coach, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, first of all, tell us what attracted you to Vancouver and the Whitecaps.
There was a lot of stuff attracting me to Vancouver and the Whitecaps. Obviously, been a player and a coach for the last 30 years in Denmark. New experience to experience something completely new. The MLS. A league in not in transformation, but very much in growth, not just on the pitch, but also, everybody's hearing a lot more about it all over the world. Also, the hype for football in North America, or soccer, as I have to get used to call it North America, right? And with the World Cup coming up and all that stuff, so. A lot of good things going on in the MLS, and also a lot of excitement about the league and about soccer in general, and then a different experience also for me, a quite new challenge. So I think it was a easy get go from, even though that it's pretty far from where I come from normally.
I understand you have a Canadian connection in your life that has brought you to our country from time to time. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I have a Canadian connection, but it was a great experience we had. We lived with the entire family for a year in Toronto. My wife is an oncologist and a cancer doctor, and she worked on the hospital in Toronto for 1 year, and that was a great experience for the entirety of the family. And we had a great year, and also gave us the opportunity to come visit Vancouver. So it was, and that was also, beautiful 3 days we had in May in 19, where Vancouver showed itself from its absolute best. 3 days with sun. I know that it's not what you always can expect, but Yeah, it was great, and we were just happy with the nation, with Canada and with Canadians. The people we met was absolutely amazing.
Yes, but it's always sunny here.
Yeah,
Don't let
always.
anyone tell you differently. And how about this? Our community's getting richer on two fronts: a cancer doctor and a soccer coach, all in one.
How many Major League Soccer games have you seen in person, do you think, at this point? Did you catch many games in Toronto or here when you were visiting?
I've seen one.
Mm.
Yeah, one game live. It was Toronto FC playing Vancouver Whitecaps in Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was a draw 1-1, and that was pretty. It's pretty fun today. That's the only game I've seen. Right, so it was pretty interesting back then. I remember they had a very promising young left winger. I had a connection to Toronto Football Club back then, and I asked them afterwards, who was that left winger guy from the Whitecaps? He looked very good. Yeah, he's very talented.
And he's 14 or whatever he was at the time. Yeah.
He's turned out okay, coach.
He's heading for Bayern Munich, and I said, "Oh, wow, Bayern Munich, yeah." His name was Alphonso Davies, and now the rest is history, right?
So I think the biggest, question a lot of fans will have. Okay, he obviously hasn't coached in MLS before, but how close is what he's been to, and not even skill level. I think people would accept that the parallels of the Danish league versus MLS, but more just in terms of style. As you know, Serie A looks different than the Premier League. So just in terms of style, what do you think that transition is going to be like from what you've seen so much of in most of your career, both as player and coach, in Denmark to what you see in Major League Soccer?
It's really big differences from what I see Major League Soccer from the Danish league. The Danish league is extremely tight, and the games are not played that openly. In Major League Soccer, I think the game is very open. You have fast transitions all the time. You have high pace. Also, a lot of teams working high pace against the ball, and it's never a calm game. I think. I also think that the structure of the the way the league is built up with the playoffs and no relegation, also maybe tend to open games up, because there's a lot more value in a win compared to a draw, when you are maybe fighting for not relegating a league. Then you might consider getting 1 point against a tough opponent would be good, and you'll try to secure the point instead of risk too much. Then this is more open from what I've seen, but still, I think quite different. I will try, of course, to also understand that I'm in a different culture than I used to, but still have the principles we have to work after, and that's definitely what we're gonna do. But also acknowledging that it's not about changing everything in the culture of the soccer here, because I have to adapt as well.
How much homework have you done on the roster? Did you pour over tape on individual players, including guys like that we don't know very well, and like a big player like Stuart Armstrong? Do you know much about what you're taking over here?
No, just to be fair, it's not that I know much about it. You have to see players work in the daily work. You have to see them train on the training ground. You have to see how they work together. You have to see all of that before you can say actually what you know. What I've seen is, of course, from games, right? And in many games, there's a lot of players I haven't seen because they haven't started, or maybe been injured, or haven't been available. So I have to get to learn stuff from the bottom, and that's also challenging. But everybody is talking about this preseason, and we have 5 weeks, and but we don't stop training after the first 5 weeks anyway. So this is an ongoing process. We want to of course to add something all the time, and you cannot in 5 weeks make a complete revolution of a team. We have to make some things. There's a lot of good things from what I've seen. Hardworking team, hardworking players, playing with very good attitude. So that's things we're going to carry on, and then we have to, of course, adjust a little bit about the style of play and how we would like to approach different phases of the game and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Coach. It's kind of like a shotgun wedding here. You're off to Spain in a couple of days with this group. So, how do you approach such a short lead time into being the boss? And is that optimal to you? Would you have done things differently if you had more time before the start of all this?
I've never heard about anybody who didn't want more time, but that's how it is. Time is a factor in football. But sometimes you get called upon in the middle of the season, right? And then you may have to make a decision, and then you have two days for a next game or stuff like that. I don't know people here yet. That's just a fact. I have to get to know them, the staff, the players, and I will. And we have some time, and 3 weeks in Spain, we can, we can have a honeymoon and also get divorced, but that's how it is in every relationship in 3 weeks. But no, I'm looking forward to get to know people. From what I've seen this far, I just connected with good people who wants the best for the Whitecaps, and that's also what I want.
Yeah. What would you? For Whitecaps supporters who want to know what kind of a coach is he, what does he preach tactically, what kind of style does he play? How would you describe what type of coach you are and what type of team you would like to field?
Yeah, I would like a team on the field that shows courage to dominate the game on the ball, that not afraid of making mistakes, because we have to, of course, accept that mistakes is part of the game. And a team that can play a fast possessional game, where we also able to create chances out of the possession we have, and then of course a team that also is not afraid of going up and try and challenge our opponents when they have the ball. So that's the team I will work for putting on the field when we start out in February.
You don't have a full roster yet. Has Axel told you when to expect a couple of new guys? Is that days, still weeks away? What do you think?
And are you involved in that player procurement?
Oh, it's just been too early now for me and to be involved in these parts. Of course, I would rather that we get the right pieces than we hurry up. To me, it's a long season. We end the season ends in October. That can happen so many things. So if we get the right pieces, okay, we have to accept that it might take a bit time, but yeah, that's what we should aim for.
Well, Coach, welcome again to our community. Congratulations on the appointment. I think it's fitting that you saw a TFC Whitecaps match as your only MLS Cat match live in person. You'll know the importance of the Canadian Derby. Jesper, if anything, we got to beat Toronto here.
Yeah, okay. If you win one match, it's that one.
Thank you for the time, sir. We wish you the best of luck. Enjoy and get the work done in Spain. Looking forward to the season.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
So Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center, where if you have your tickets, you're heading to the game in downtown Vancouver, make a staycation out of it. Book your stay here at the Wall, 604-331-1000. Ask for the Harrison Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. We'll say this, January, a good time to get in here, right? It tends to be a slower travel
There's
season.
Parking spots
so,
too.
You know, homestand coming up might be a great time to get that S&P rate here at the Wall. You can text us 778-402-9680, email live at securesandprice.com. All of the great clips, inbox great clips.
It's going to be great.
I'm going to be there later today. Way overdue for a haircut.
Yeah, disheveled.
Jesper Sørensen, look, as a communicator in his, well, no best than his second language, right? I thought he did very well there. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have all the answers and was honest about that, right? Didn't, come in here saying I had a magic wand. He was going to fix things. The big difference to the Danish league, that is going to be interesting to monitor. He didn't say it in so many terms, but the European athlete tends to be smaller and not necessarily quite as raw athletically, but typically with better tactical skill because they've been playing the game and under better coaches for long periods of time. You do tend to get that bigger, more transportable athlete in MLS, and so we'll see how that goes. I was honest about.
I think about a guy like Stuart Armstrong with regards to that part, and he was shocked at the fitness level needed when he got here.
Yeah,
which is why Vanny held him back. He's like, he needs to learn how to run more, needs to get to, and so. With the changes system now, is this going to suit Stuart Armstrong just a little bit more? Like, it'd be nice if Stuart Armstrong wasn't asked to run back as much. Like,
right.
Ryan Gauld can, Stuart can't.
Right.
So finding that balance will be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we're bigger people here in North America than Europe. Mm-hmm. And, God knows the United States is an athlete factory, right? And we're starting to see that bleed. Guys who would otherwise have tried their hand at football, basketball, some of the North American sports, they're matriculating to soccer and upping the overall quality of athlete in the loop. Was honest about not knowing the personnel. He's got to figure him out. He's got 5 weeks now, starting in Spain this week.
And he said in the press conference that he's not going to commit to formation because of that question. Like, he needs to know the tools in the box before he decides how he wants them to start. So everybody's been wondering, is he going to continue 3 at the back from Vanny? He needs to see it all.
Well, that's the proper answer.
Yeah.
That is absolutely the proper answer.
And they don't have a full roster yet.
No.
So,
and I loved what he said about, okay, give me a description. What does Jesper Sørensen football look like? Courage, dominate the ball, not be afraid to make mistakes, fast possessional game. And, of course, the other thing he'll become acclimatized to is the travel in MLS, which is, needless to say, a lot more taxing than in any domestic European league.
The other X's and O's thing I'm curious about is Vanni Sartini was, and he would say this himself, amongst the most zonal defensive coaches in all of global football. How he wanted the team to play defensively. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to guess based on that statement.
You can't go further.
You can't go further than that.
So
what does what is the confusion level early on from the defenders as they extricate themselves from that,
and who has the chops to mark man for man, right? Yeah. Look though, in terms of the story. Took a trip to Vancouver, fell in love with our city, got a chance to see them play at TFC, and wanted to try his hand at this. And better half's a cancer doctor. Welcome to town, Mrs. Sorensen. Mm-hmm. BC Lions re-signed cornerback Gary Peters and the Sask Army knife, Riley Pickett. Peters hasn't missed a game since signing here in 2018, coming off his stint with Edmonton. It's 104 straight games for an Ironman, twice the team nominee for most outstanding defensive player, 2-time running CFL All-Star here. As for Pickett, well, they call him the Sask Army knife because he was drafted as a defensive lineman. Now he's the long snapper. He's worked some at fullback. We talked about Patrice Vernet when he resigned, that versatile Canadian who's a beast on special teams. You win with those guys, and Pickett important in that regard. And the Lions have also brought a running back bringing a running back to camp here. Kadri Olesen, he was on the receiving end of that incredible Nathan Rourke preseason play in Jacksonville a couple of years ago. Also played some games with the Atlanta Falcons, so he'll be there pushing James Butler at camp. Football south of the border, and look, 5 of the 6 games on wildcard weekend were dreadful. I mean, LA jumps out there and just gives Minnesota no hope. 27-9 they win in Glendale. Canadian defensive tackle Neville Gallimore amongst those participating in a playoff record 9 sack performance. That LA defense is getting better and better. They got young guys there, Turner, Verse, Fiske. Really like the way that side of the ball is coming together for the Rams.
Credit to the vibes too, by the way. A lower bowl jammed there in Arizona, and that looked like a Rams home game.
There was tons of purple there too. They were quiet because they didn't have much to cheer for, and also a lot of Cardinals fans, turning out just to support.
It's an NFL football game,
exactly, which was nice to see. This Vikings team, though, it all comes crashing down in a period of 15 days. This is the first 14-win team to lose in the wild card round. Now, a little bit of an asterisk there. Of course, we play 17 games now. We used to play 16. And in different playoff formats, you win 14 games. You usually had a bye. Never had a 14-win team lost its final 2 games. Minnesota not only did so, but did so by a combined 40 points. They started 5-0. They lost to the Lions and Rams in back-to-back weeks in October, Blake. They won 9 in a row and then lost to the Lions and Rams in back-to-back weeks. So only 2 teams got them this year.
That's crazy. But the biggest thing is, what do they do at the pivot position now? Because Sam Darnold was
21 off-target throws in the final 2 losses.
Yeah.
Like an obscene amount for a guy who had been so good to that point. I think Aaron Glenn, that defensive coordinator in Detroit, basically showed the world what you need to do with Sam Darnold here. Probably cost him some money as well. Like, if you were at all interested as the Seahawks before these last 2 weeks, do you go there? Because Geno can give you that, right?
But Geno can't give you 14-3. Like, Sam Darnold gave them 14-3. So is he just a guy, which at times he looked like, or is he learning to be a starting quarterback in the NFL?
I thought Troy Aikman's commentary was very instructive during the game. There were a number of times that Darnold just needs to slide a little, step up in the pocket, and he's got throwing lanes. Like those 9 sacks, that was the quarterback putting himself in bad positions as much as it was the offensive line and the protection breaking down, Blake.
But that's his first time in this situation. Does he learn there?
Pocket presence is tough to teach. Like, it's so instinctive. Everything is happening in 3 seconds. You just sort of have to have an innate sense of when you got to move up, when you got to slide back, left, right.
That's fair.
And I just didn't see it from Darnold.
The other thing coming out of this game.
I mean, a lot of guys can throw it from the spot, right? Matthew Stafford's one of those guys. You get to Stafford, like, he looks very ordinary. What did we used to say about Brady? Rush him from the middle, and if you force him to move left or right, that's your best chance.
The other thing coming out of this game is the woulda, coulda, shoulda for the Seattle Seahawks. That's the Rams. That's their spot, right? Seahawks win the division. The Seahawks win one more game. They beat the Rams. They could have actually had the same record. It's just they swapped out a Rams victory.
Beat the friggin' New York Giants at home.
Right. They're in this spot.
Yep.
And do they get an overachieving Vikings team?
Yep.
That it really...
In Seattle on a cold night. Yeah.
The woulda, coulda, shoulda.
The Blue Jays, this is a couple days old, but wanted to make mention. A free agent signing pitcher, Jeff Hoffman, and they're finalists with the Padres and Dodgers for pitcher Roki Sasaki, the Japanese sensation. Tell me if this is not perfectly on brand for the Blue Jays offseason. Hoffman failed his physicals with both Atlanta and Baltimore. He had more money at stake, more term at stake, and in fact, even an opportunity to start for one of those teams. But the Blue Jays sweeped in with a 3-year deal for a reliever, paying him $10 million a year. Now, he was the 9th overall pick by the Blue Jays in the 2014 draft. He was part of the big trade to Colorado for Troy Tulowitzki. Remember when Anthopoulos said, enough, we're getting back to the playoffs, and traded everything on the farm for right now help. And to his credit, he's turned into a terrific relief pitcher. Tough in Colorado. The numbers don't usually look very good, but then he got to Cincinnati and since Philadelphia. And it fills a position of need. And you're starting to look at that Blue Jays pen now and saying, okay, I see the vision. On Sasaki, Blake, they are finalists.
No, you don't say. You don't say.
I think I know how this story ends.
Yeah. Yeah. They were in it right till the end.
When you said to me yesterday, no, They need one of those two teams to drop out so that they can be the finalist on Society.
There's still one more team to fall off.
They don't do bronze medals. They do silver medals on free agents. And then, hashtag no moves down the I-5 is dead with the Mariners. Seattle finally gets active, signs infielder Donovan Solano, ex of the Padres. He's a for third base, first base guy. He's played some second base as well. Coming off a good year, 760 OPS, 8 home runs, career high in 96 games.
You will be still forgiven if you said, who?
Who? Yeah. You'll get some playing time, though, Donovan, in Seattle. That much is sure. All 3 Canadian men advanced to the second round of the Aussie Open. Felix actually won the tune-up Adelaide Open. Yeah. He plays an unseeded Spaniard next.
That sounds good.
Number 6 seed Casper Ruud, potentially, in the third round. Chapo plays the 16 seed Italian Lorenzo Musetti, and 6'8" young Canadian Gabriel Diallo wins a 5-setter to advance. He's got the 19th seed Kieran Kachachnikov. Anyways, he plays a Russian.
If it's KH, it's just the H.
Kachachinov. Yes. Layla. Into the second round versus an unseeded Spaniard. She would have Coco Gauff in the third round, the third seed, and then poor Vancouver's Rebecca Marino.
Do you know that
didn't make it out of round 1?
Gabriel Diallo is only a year younger than Felix.
Yeah, he played college tennis.
Yeah,
and there's not a ton of ATP stars that have gone the college route, but
when you're 6'8", you're going to be given a second look. And he entered this event 87th in the world and went the first round win. You'd think that's probably going to go up.
And then how about this story? Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver A.J. Brown, he may just have changed a UBC professor's life. He is seen on the sidelines of their playoff game reading a book. And so he tells the reporter, what book you're reading, the reporter said. And he says, it's called Inner Excellence. The author is James Murphy. That book has gone from number 552,709 on Amazon's bestseller list.
That's 552,000.
To number 1. Now, Murphy is a former UBC football player. He also played club baseball at UBC. Terry McKegg, the founder, overlord, poobah of UBC baseball, tells me he was part of really like the first club team that showed up on UBC's campus. Of course, now it's a varsity team. He spent time in the Cubs organization trying to make it as a pro ball player. And then he writes on one of his web pages, he left his life here to head to the Arizona desert to research one question. How can an Olympic athlete train for 4 years for an event that may last less than 60 seconds and perform with complete peace and confidence? He studied that. He wrote his book. Ted Scott, the caddy for Scotty Scheffler, swears by him. Apparently, he's also worked with Hunter Mahan, former PGA Tour pro. And he's on the UBC faculty. He lives in Point Roberts. With the number 1 book on Amazon's bestseller list, thanks to Eagles wide receiver A.J. Brown.
I just love the fact that A.J. Brown wasn't watching a YouTube video on this, that he was reading a freaking book.
Reading a book on the sideline. Obviously having an impact on his career.
It's an incredible story.
Poll question results. Ernie Mitsubishi poll question results for Monday. Should the Canucks re-sign Kevin Lankinen if it means paying him like a starter? Yes or no? What did the people say, Blake?
People said yes.
They did.
They forget that
percentage.
There's cap space things.
Percentage.
But 66.
56. Dario. Demko is injury prone. He isn't the goalie everyone expected he'd be at this point. However, no cap space to sign Lankinen like a starter unless he signs for cheap, which he won't. Canucks have to find another version of him for less than $1 million. Agent provocateur, absolutely, and for 3 reasons. Number 1, season most likely would have been lost without him. 2, Demko probably never going to be the same goaltender again due to that injury. 3, he's insured should Demko get hurt again or decides to retire early due to ongoing injuries. I don't think that's happening anytime soon, but salt and paprika, if we move on from Demko, can't have that much money tied up in goaltending. Fair enough.
You can, though. You can. Teams have got way more than that tied up in goaltending.
And Jay says, I'd be comfortable in the $4 million range. It puts our total spend on goalies at $9 million, gives us a year to figure out if Demko's healthy. Then becomes either Lankinen's net, and we move on from Demko, or Demko returns to form, and we trade Lankinen. I like that plan, Jay. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program. I said they played very few games with their 5 games with their big four, and fewer still with Philip Hronek, and, none for Miller, Pettersson, Hughes, Demko, and Hronek together this year, because Demko wasn't healthy when Hronek was. And then lastly, this scheduling quirk for the Calgary Flames and St. Louis Blues. Flames at Blues in St. Louis tonight. Flames at Blues in St. Louis again Thursday. I don't know a reason why, but I'm told that this has happened before with the Flames. In fact, Blake, 2 years ago, they played consecutive road games in San Jose, and then later in the year played consecutive home games in St. Louis, or road games in St. Louis. So back-to-back in San Jose, back-to-back in St. Louis, the Flames.
Again, that to me sounds like an unfair advantage.
That is something that Rutherford and Alvin are going to have to go to the NHL on the Gillis and Gilman vein, right? And bang fist on table. No, we want to hunker down in the city and play that team twice, get it out of the way, and save on the travel.
The West Coast teams should all be saying that.
For sure. I mean, if you got to make 2 separate trips to Chicago in a year from Vancouver, it's a lot of travel. Why not just sit down, spend some time in Chicago, play the Hawks twice, or the Blues in St. Louis? Anything to self-report?
JC calling me on a couple of infractions.
Good on JC. I like JC.
I mistook a roux for a reduction. Roux, you add flour to, versus a reduction, you boil down.
Very good. Yeah.
I didn't need to look that up to know that. I just said the wrong word yesterday.
Okay.
And then I mentioned the expected goal differential, and he went into it and said that it's really, when you look at it, the Canucks expected goal differential is driven by the scoring and not the goaltending. I was going by, you're looking at goals against above expected, which is a positive number. But, I mean, I haven't looked at it recently. Traditionally with Demko and Lankinen, goals saved above expected is very high.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't believe it has been as high this year for whatever reason, but their goals for above expected is quite high.
Yeah,
this year,
based on the quality, the rules of thumb here for Rick Tocchet.
Yeah,
somebody in the chat yesterday was like, "Do you really think they're telling them not to shoot?" Yes, they are.
Well, they were. I think more recently they have.
Well, within the last game and a half, maybe.
Well, the last week, a couple weeks, I think they've adapted a little bit and been like, "Wow, we got to get pucks on net here," and particularly when Pettersson was out and Hughes was out, because I think they realized, like, we don't have the weapons to convert grade A chances, so we can work it around.
But that hasn't happened yet.
But when that puck gets on the stick of a non-finisher. Well, I mean, they got the 30 shots.
That's
last
once.
week.
This is a big spike.
No,
everything else is small.
Blake, I'm not saying they're successful. I'm saying they're endeavoring. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.